My thumb hovered over the screen, trembling just enough to blur the name at the top of my contact list. I shouldn't have been this nervous. It was just a picture. A picture meant for Cynthia, my best friend, who was currently sitting 3 miles away waiting for me to confirm our Valentine's plans. But the red silk of the dress I was wearing felt like it was burning my skin, clinging to every curve in a way that made me feel powerful and terrified all at once. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror again. The white lace detailing traced the dip of my waist, the red silk spilling over my hips like liquid fire. My long black coils were pinned up, leaving my neck bare. I looked expensive. I looked like a woman who could demand things. Not like Vivian, the junior intern who spent her days making 300 photocopies and dodging the mean girls in the marketing department. I took a deep breath, snapped the photo, and typed the caption quickly before I could lose my nerve. The words stared back at me, bold and reckless. Do you think CEO Kim could handle this? It was a joke. A stupid, inside joke between me and Cynthia because we had spent the last 3 months obsessing over my boss. CEO Kim Tae-on, the ruthless king of Seoul. The man who walked through the lobby of Kim Enterprises like he owned the air we breathed. He was 35, with a jawline sharp enough to cut glass and eyes that looked like frozen obsidian. He was also famous for 2 things: destroying his business rivals and never, ever looking twice at anyone outside his elite chaebol circle. Specifically, the rumor was he didn't date black women. He didn't date anyone who wasn't born with a silver spoon in their mouth and a lineage tracing back to the Joseon dynasty. But tonight, in this dress, I didn't care about his rules. I just wanted Cynthia to hype me up. I wanted her to reply with a row of fire emojis so I could take this dress off, put on my pajamas, and go back to being invisible. I tapped the first name in my recents list. My brain registered the letters KM, and my muscle memory assumed it was Kim Cynthia, her contact name in my phone. Whoosh! The sound of the message being sent echoed in the silent apartment like a gunshot. I smiled, waiting for the buzz. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. 3. I glanced down at the screen. The name at the top wasn't Cynthia. It read, CEO Kim Tae-on, Work Mobile. My heart didn't just stop, it evaporated. The room spun violently. I dropped the phone onto the carpet as if it had turned into a live grenade. No, I whispered, the sound scraping out of my throat. No, no, no. I scrambled to my knees, snatching the phone back up. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen. I jabbed at the message, frantically looking for the unsend button, the delete for everyone button, anything that could rewrite the last 10 seconds of my life. Error. Message delivered. And then, the worst thing in the world happened. The little gray check marks at the bottom of the photo turned blue. Read. He was awake. It was 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech conglomerate was awake, and he was looking at a photo of his invisible junior intern wearing a dress that was basically sin stitched together with red thread. I stared at the screen, waiting for the 3 dots to appear, waiting for a reply that said, "You're fired," or "Who is this?" or "Security is on their way." But there were no dots. No typing bubble. Just the blue check marks, glowing like toxic waste. He had seen it. He had read the caption asking if he could handle me. And he had said absolutely nothing. The silence was heavier than a scream. It felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I scrambled backward until my back hit the bed frame, pulling my knees to my chest. I need to leave the country, I said aloud to the empty room. I need to change my name, move to Antarctica, and live with the penguins. My phone buzzed. I shrieked and threw it across the room. It buzzed again. And again. I crawled towards it, peeking through my fingers. It wasn't him. It was Cynthia. Cynthia, girl, where's the pic? I'm waiting. I didn't reply. I couldn't tell her. If I told her, it would become real. If I kept it inside, maybe I could wake up tomorrow and find out this was just a stress-induced nightmare brought on by too much caffeine and overtime. I didn't sleep. Not for a single minute. I spent the next 7 hours staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment my thumb hit send over and over again. Every time my phone phantom buzzed, my pulse spiked. When the sun finally rose, casting a pale, judgmental light over my apartment, I felt like a ghost. I had to go to work. If I didn't show up, it would look guilty. If I called in sick, he would know I was hiding. I had to go in, keep my head down, and pray that he received thousands of emails a day and had already forgotten about the random number that sent him a thirst trap in the middle of the night. I took a shower, scrubbing my skin until it was red, trying to wash away the feeling of exposure. I bypassed the cute outfits I usually tried to put together. Instead, I reached for the armor of the invisible, a stiff, high-necked gray blouse that was 2 sizes too big and a black pencil skirt that fell below my knees. I pulled my hair back into the tightest, most severe bun possible. No makeup. No jewelry. You are furniture, I said to my reflection. You are a stapler. You are a potted plant. He does not notice potted plants. The subway ride to the office felt like a funeral procession. The towering glass building of Kim Enterprises loomed over the city like a giant obelisk. Usually, I felt proud walking in here. Today, I felt like I was walking into the lion's den wearing a steak necklace. I swiped my ID badge at the turnstile. Beep. Green light. Okay, good. My badge still worked. I wasn't fired yet. I made it to the elevator, squeezing into the back corner behind a group of tall men from the finance department. They were talking about the new AI tools for business operations the company was rolling out next quarter, something about optimizing workflow. I tried to make myself as small as possible. The elevator dinged at the 40th floor, executive administration. My floor. I stepped out, clutching my bag to my chest. The office was buzzing with the usual morning chaos. Phones ringing, printers humming, the smell of expensive espresso wafting from the break room. It was terrifyingly normal. Vivian. I jumped, nearly dropping my bag. It was just Sarah, the senior admin. She looked annoyed, holding a stack of files. You're late, she snapped. Mr. Kim canceled his morning golf session. He's in a mood. The whole schedule is a mess. I need you to run these down to legal immediately. I nodded frantically, taking the files. He canceled golf? Yes. Sarah rolled her eyes, adjusting her glasses. Apparently, he was up late dealing with something. He's been in his office since 6 a.m. Don't go near that side of the floor unless you have a death wish. My stomach dropped through the floor. Up late dealing with something. Me. I was something. I grabbed the files and practically ran towards the elevators, desperate to get away from the glass walls of the CEO's suite. Wait, Sarah called out. I froze. Yes. Why are you dressed like a librarian? She frowned, looking me up and down. You look plain. Plain is good, I squeaked. Plain is professional. I spent the next 3 hours hiding. I volunteered to organize the archive room in the basement. I offered to go pick up lunch for the entire department. I did everything I could to stay as far away from the executive wing as possible. But you can't hide forever. Around 1 p.m., the intercom at my desk buzzed. It was the distinct, sharp tone that meant the call was coming from the inner sanctum. I stared at the blinking red light. My hands were shaking so bad I had to grip the edge of the desk. This is Vivian, I whispered. Vivian, Sarah's voice crackled through, but it sounded tight. Strained. Mr. Kim wants to see the intern team. In his office. Now. The whole team? I asked, hope flaring in my chest. If it was the whole team, maybe it was just a normal review. Maybe it wasn't about the photo. Yes. All 4 of you. Line up outside his door in 5 minutes. And fix your collar, you look disheveled. The line went dead. I stood up. My legs felt like jelly. I smoothed down my oversized gray skirt, buttoned my blouse all the way to my chin, and checked my reflection in my powered-off monitor. I looked terrified. I walked down the long hallway toward the double mahogany doors. The other 3 interns, Jason, Emily, and Minji, were already there, looking nervous but excited. "I heard we're getting bonuses," Jason whispered, straightening his tie. "I heard he's firing someone," Minji muttered, fixing her lip gloss. I said nothing. I just stood at the end of the line, staring at the floor, praying for the building to collapse. The doors opened. CEO Kim Tae-on was sitting behind his massive glass desk. The city skyline of Seoul was spread out behind him, but he blocked out the sun. He was wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than my student loans, his dark hair perfectly styled, his face unreadable. He didn't look up as we filed in. He was writing something with a gold fountain pen, the scratching sound echoing in the silent room. "Line up," he said. His voice was deep, smooth, and terrifyingly calm. We shuffled into a row in front of his desk. I stood at the far left, trying to blend into the bookshelf. Tae-on finished writing, capped his pen, and slowly looked up. His eyes swept over Jason, then Emily, then Minji, and then they landed on me. The air left the room. It wasn't a casual glance. It was a lock. His dark eyes narrowed slightly, focusing on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. He didn't look angry. He looked curious, like a scientist examining a new species of bacteria. He stood up. He was tall, well over 6 feet, looming over the desk. He walked around the edge, moving with a predator's grace. He stopped in front of Jason first. "Report on the merger files?" he asked. "Done, sir," Jason squeaked. Tae-on nodded. He moved to Emily. "Coffee order?" "The usual, sir," she smiled too brightly. He moved to Minji. He didn't say anything, just looked at her shoes and moved on. And then he was standing in front of me. He was so close I could smell him, a mix of expensive sandalwood, crisp paper, and something dangerously masculine. He towered over me. I kept my eyes glued to the knot of his silk tie, refusing to look up. "Vivian," he said. My name sounded different in his mouth. Heavier. "Sir," I whispered. "You're quiet today," he murmured. "Usually you chatter with the receptionist." My head snapped up in surprise. He noticed that? I thought I was furniture. His eyes were locked on mine. They were dark, endless pools. He took a step closer, invading my personal space. The other interns shifted uncomfortably, sensing the sudden shift in atmospheric pressure. Tae-on tilted his head slightly, his gaze dropping from my eyes to my lips, then down to the high collar of my shapeless gray blouse. It felt like he was x-raying me, like he could see right through the ugly clothes to the red silk underneath. "The AI tools for business operations report," he said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming a low rumble that vibrated in my chest. "Did you finish it?" "Yes, sir. It's on your desk." "Good." He didn't move away. He stayed right there, in my breathing space. Then he leaned down. His lips brushed past my ear, so close I could feel the heat of his breath. "Because I wouldn't want you to be distracted," he whispered, so low only I could hear. "By your extracurricular activities." My breath hitched, trapped somewhere between my pounding heart and my throat. His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Extracurricular activities. He knew. He absolutely knew. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, fighting the urge to dissolve into a puddle on his expensive Persian rug. When I opened them, he was already straightening up, his face back to being an unreadable mask of corporate indifference. But his eyes, they lingered on my flushed cheeks for a fraction of a second too long before he turned away. "Dismissed," he said sharply, waving a hand at the 4 of us. The other interns practically sprinted for the door, relieved to escape the suffocating aura of power he projected. I stumbled after them, my knees knocking together. I felt his gaze burning a hole between my shoulder blades until the heavy mahogany doors clicked shut behind me. "Holy," Jason breathed out the moment we were in the hallway. He loosened his tie, looking pale. "Did you feel that?" He was intense today. I thought he was going to fire Minji for wearing those heels. "Did you see how he looked at Vivian?" Emily whispered, glancing at me with wide eyes. "He was so close to you." "What did he say?" Nothing, I lied quickly, my voice sounding strangled. Just about the report. Just standard procedure. They didn't look convinced, but before they could interrogate me further, a shadow fell over us. It was Hannah, the head of the marketing department and the unofficial leader of the Mean Girls clique. She was beautiful in a terrifying way, perfect porcelain skin, designer suits, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Rumor had it she had been trying to get CEO Kim's attention for 3 years with zero success. Well, Hannah drawled, stepping in front of me and blocking my path to the elevator. Her 2 minions flanked her, creating a wall of judgment. The invisible intern survives another day. What did he want? Did you mess up the coffee order again? I hugged my files to my chest, trying to make myself smaller. No, Hannah. Just a routine check-in. She narrowed her eyes, scanning my oversized gray outfit with disdain. Routine? He kept you there longer than anyone else. And why are you dressed like a grandmother? Trying to beg for a raise by looking pathetic. Her minions snickered. Excuse me, I mumbled, trying to step around her. Hannah moved to block me again. She leaned in, lowering her voice. Listen to me, little intern. Don't get any ideas. He looks at you because you stick out like a sore thumb in this company. He's probably just figuring out the best way to let you go. The cruelty in her voice stung, but the fear of what Tae-on had actually said to me was far worse. I didn't have the energy to fight her. You're right, Hannah, I said quietly. I'm just an intern. I'm going back to work now. She smirked, satisfied that she had put me back in my place. Good girl. Go file something. I rushed past her, ignoring their laughter, and made a beeline for the only sanctuary I had, the 3rd-floor bathroom. I burst into the furthest stall, locked the door, and collapsed against it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unzip my bag to find my phone. I needed Cynthia. I needed her rationality. I needed her to tell me I wasn't hallucinating. I dialed her number. She picked up on the first ring. Vivi. Finally. Did you get fired? Are you in jail? Why have you been radio silent for 12 hours? He spoke to me, I gasped, sliding down the stall door until I was sitting on the tiled floor. Cynthia, he spoke to me. Who? The security guard. No. Him. CEO Kim. There was a pause on the other end, followed by a screech that nearly blew out my eardrum. What? What did he say? Did he fire you for the photo? He whispered in my ear, I whispered, my voice trembling. He asked about my report, but then he leaned in close, Cynthia. So close I could smell his cologne. And he said he didn't want me to be distracted by my extracurricular activities. Oh my God. Cynthia was screaming now. He saw it. He definitely saw it. And he didn't fire you? He teased you. Is that teasing? I asked frantically. Or is it a threat? Maybe he's building a legal case for sexual harassment against me. Maybe he's going to sue me for emotional distress because I sent him a picture of my cleavage. Girl, please, Cynthia scoffed. If he wanted to fire you, you'd be gone. He kept you there. He whispered to you. That man is hooked. You sent the bait, and the shark took a bite. I am not bait. I am an intern. I am furniture. Not anymore, honey. You are the furniture he wants to rearrange. I groaned, putting my head in my hands. This isn't funny. I have to face him every day. I have to. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened. I froze, holding my breath. 2 women walked in, their heels clicking sharply on the tile. I recognized the voices immediately. It was Sarah, the admin, and one of the other senior assistants. Did you see the schedule change? Sarah asked, the sound of running water filling the room. He canceled the lunch meeting with the Japanese investors. He's never done that. I know, the other woman replied. And he's been acting strange all morning. He keeps unlocking his phone, staring at something, and then locking it again. He's distracted. Maybe it's a woman, Sarah suggested. Him? A woman. The other woman laughed. Please. The man is a robot. Unless he's dating a new algorithm, there's no way. They laughed, dried their hands, and left. I sat there in the silence, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He's distracted. Because of me? Was he really canceling meetings to stare at my accidental thirst trap? My phone buzzed in my hand. New message, reception desk. Vivian, there's a delivery for you. A courier just dropped it off. It's marked strictly personal. A delivery? For me? Nobody sent me anything at work. Cynthia, I whispered into the phone. I have to go. Something just arrived for me. I hung up before she could protest and exited the stall. I checked my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were wide and panicked, but my skin was glowing despite the lack of makeup. I splashed cold water on my face, took a deep breath, and marched back to my desk. There, sitting right on top of my keyboard, was a sleek, matte black box. It was tied with a thick white satin ribbon. There was no logo, no branding. Just pure, understated luxury. The entire open-plan office seemed to be watching me. Hannah was glaring from across the room, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her mouth. I approached the box like it might explode. My hands trembled as I pulled the ribbon. It fell away like water. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in layers of black tissue paper, was a dress. It wasn't red. It was a deep, rich burgundy velvet. It looked soft enough to melt in your hands. It was strapless, with a sweetheart neckline and a structure that screamed custom-made. On top of the dress lay a small, heavy card. Cream-colored cardstock with embossed black lettering. I picked it up, my fingers brushing against the velvet. The other dress was nice. But red is a bit predictable, don't you think? This color suits you better. Be my date tonight. The company Valentine's Gala. 8 p.m. Kim. I stopped breathing. The world stopped spinning. Be my date. Not come to the party. Not you're invited. Be my date. The card slipped from my numb fingers and fluttered onto my desk. Vivian? It was Hannah. She was standing right behind me, her voice sharp with suspicion. She looked at the dress, then at the card, then at me. Who sent you that? Is that from a client? I snatched the card up before she could read the signature. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. It's from my boyfriend, I lied, the words tumbling out in a rush. For Valentine's. Hannah scoffed, eyeing the expensive packaging. Your boyfriend can afford custom velvet? I didn't know baristas made that kind of money. She laughed, and her minions joined in. But her eyes were calculating. She knew something was off. If you'll excuse me, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I have work to do. I shoved the box under my desk, my leg pressing against it protectively. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze. I couldn't focus on spreadsheets. I couldn't focus on emails. All I could think about was the man sitting 40 floors up, who had looked at a photo of me and decided to break every single one of his rules. If you're enjoying the story so far, please don't forget to write a comment, subscribe, and like Story's Pulse. Tell me where you are watching from. Are you Team Vivian or Team CEO Kim? Welcome back, besties, and if you are new here, welcome to the family. 5 p.m. felt like an eternity away. When the clock finally struck, I practically sprinted to the elevator, clutching the black box to my chest like it contained the crown jewels. Going somewhere? Hannah's voice stopped me dead in my tracks. She was leaning against the wall near the elevator bank, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. I thought you had overtime tonight. Or is your boyfriend taking you somewhere fancy? I turned slowly, hugging the box tighter. I have plans, Hannah. Of course you do, she scoffed, pushing off the wall. Just don't forget to file those reports before you leave. Wouldn't want Mr. Kim to think his furniture is getting lazy. I didn't answer. I stepped into the elevator and let the doors slide shut, cutting off her smirk. Just you wait, I thought, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against the velvet box. Just you wait. Getting ready felt like preparing for war. My apartment was small, cluttered with books and half-finished coffee cups, but tonight it transformed into a backstage dressing room. I showered, scrubbing my skin with vanilla-scented sugar scrub until I glowed. I moisturized every inch of my body with cocoa butter, the scent warm and inviting. Then, the dress. I pulled it out of the box with reverence. The deep burgundy velvet was heavy, expensive. As I stepped into it, the fabric hugged my curves like a second skin. It was strapless, with a sweetheart neckline that dipped just low enough to be dangerous, and a slit up the left thigh that went high. Very high. I looked in the mirror and gasped. This wasn't Vivian the intern. This was Vivian, the devastatingly beautiful woman who had accidentally seduced a billionaire. My long black coils tumbled down one shoulder, glossy and defined. I added a touch of gold shimmer to my eyelids, a bold red lip to match the dress, and simple gold hoops. Okay, I whispered to myself. You can do this. You are not invisible. You are seen. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The car is downstairs. "'Kay." I grabbed my small black clutch, took a deep breath, and walked out the door. A sleek black sedan was waiting at the curb. Not a taxi. A private car with tinted windows. The driver, a stern-looking man in a suit, opened the door for me without a word. I slid into the leather interior, the scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air. The ride to the venue, the Grand Seoul Hotel, was a blur of city lights and mounting panic. What was I doing? I was an intern. I made coffee. I was about to walk into a room full of Korea's elite, on the arm of a man who was famous for not dating women like me. The car pulled up to the entrance. It was a sea of flashing cameras and red carpet. My stomach did a somersault. "We're here, miss," the driver said. Before I could reach for the handle, the door was pulled open from the outside. Flashes went off like lightning. Click, 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 click. I stepped out, the cool night air hitting my bare shoulders. I kept my head high, just like I practiced. And then I saw him. He was standing at the top of the stairs, waiting. CEO Kim Tae-on. If he looked good in the office, he looked devastating tonight. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, the black fabric emphasizing his broad shoulders. His hair was swept back, revealing his sharp forehead and intense eyes. He wasn't looking at the cameras. He wasn't looking at the other guests. He was looking at me. His gaze started at my heels, traveled up the high slit of my dress, lingered on my waist, and finally locked onto my eyes. For a second, the noise of the paparazzi faded away. It was just him and me, connected by an invisible thread of tension that felt strong enough to pull me up the stairs without moving my feet. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply extended a hand. I took a shaky breath and started to climb. Every step felt heavy. People were staring, whispering. "Who is that? Is she with him? Wait, isn't that the intern?" I reached the top step. I was standing right in front of him, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to smell that intoxicating sandalwood scent again. "You're late," he murmured, his voice low and rumbly. "The traffic was bad," I whispered back, my voice barely audible over the cameras. "Liar," he said softly. Then he took my hand. His fingers were warm, his grip firm and possessive. He pulled me gently to his side, tucking my hand into the crook of his arm. "You were nervous." "I am terrified," I admitted, looking up at him. A ghost of a smirk played on his lips. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He led me into the ballroom. It was like stepping into another world. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars hung from the ceiling. The room was filled with people in gowns and tuxedos, holding flutes of champagne. A string quartet was playing something classical and elegant. As we walked in, the room went quiet. Not silent, but the kind of quiet where conversations stop mid-sentence and heads turn. All eyes were on us. On him. On me. I felt a wave of insecurity crash over me. I was the only black woman in the room. I was the only intern in the room. I felt like an imposter in a sea of diamonds. I tried to pull my hand away, instinctively wanting to create distance, to protect myself from the judgment. But Tae-on tightened his grip. He pulled me closer, pressing my side against his. It was a clear message to everyone watching. She is with me. Don't, he whispered, leaning down so his lips brushed my ear. Don't you dare shrink. You are the most beautiful woman in this room. Act like it. His words sent a jolt of electricity down my spine. I straightened my back, lifting my chin. We moved through the crowd. People parted for him like the Red Sea. He nodded to business partners, exchanged brief pleasantries, but he never let go of me. He introduced me simply as Vivian, leaving off the intern title, letting them wonder who I was. An heiress? A foreign diplomat's daughter? A model? Mr. Kim. The voice was shrill and familiar. I stiffened. It was Hannah. She was wearing a silver dress that looked like it cost a year of my salary. She was holding a glass of champagne, her eyes wide with shock as she took in the sight of me on the CEO's arm. Mr. Kim, she repeated, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I didn't know you were bringing a guest. And, Vivian? Is that you? Tae-on stopped. He looked at Hannah with the same cold indifference he used for bad quarterly reports. Hannah, he said simply. I'm surprised to see you here, Vivian, Hannah continued, her eyes raking over my dress with undisguised jealousy. I didn't think interns were on the guest list. Did you sneak in? I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Tae-on spoke first. She didn't sneak in, he said, his voice ice cold. She is my date. Hannah choked on her champagne. Your date? But sir, the policy. I mean, the rumors, you said. I said a lot of things, Tae-on interrupted, his eyes narrowing. Things change. He looked down at me then, his expression softening just a fraction. Besides, he added, his voice dropping to that intimate rumble again. Vivian has many talents. She's excellent at communication. I felt my face heat up. Communication. The photo. Hannah looked like she had been slapped. She stared at us, mouth agape, as Tae-on steered me away towards the bar. Did you see her face? I whispered, a giggle bubbling up in my throat despite my nerves. I don't pay attention to her, he said dismissively. He signaled the bartender. 2 glasses of your best red. And water. He handed me a glass of water first. Hydrate. You're shaking. I'm not shaking, I lied, taking the glass. You are, he said, taking a sip of his wine. He leaned against the bar, turning to face me fully, blocking out the rest of the room. Why? Are you afraid of them? He gestured vaguely to the crowd. They're staring, I said. They're wondering why the CEO of Kim Enterprises is with the girl who makes copies. Let them wonder, he said intensely. I don't care about them. I care about. He paused, his eyes drifting down to the slit in my dress. I care about why you sent that photo to me. My heart stopped. We were finally talking about it. It was an accident, I blurted out. I swear. I meant to send it to Cynthia, my best friend. We were just talking. About you. Talking about me? He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. And what were you saying? Specifically? I bit my lip. That you were handsome. And scary. And off limits. Off limits, he repeated slowly, tasting the words. He took a step closer, crowding me against the bar. Because I don't date black women? Is that it? I nodded, unable to speak. He set his wine glass down on the bar with a sharp clink. He placed one hand on the counter on either side of me, trapping me in a cage of his arms. That was a rule, he murmured, leaning down until our faces were inches apart. I have many rules. I like order. I like predictability. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw, his touch searingly hot. But then I saw you in that red dress, he whispered. And I realized something, Vivian. What? I breathed. I realized that I am willing to break every single rule I have ever made. His words hung in the air, heavy with promise and danger. I am willing to break every single rule. Before I could process the seismic shift in my universe, the orchestra swelled. A hush fell over the room as the MC announced the first dance of the evening. Usually, this was reserved for the CEO and his chosen partner, typically a daughter of another Chable family, a strategic alliance wrapped in silk and diamonds. Tonight, the crowd parted, their eyes darting between us. A woman stepped forward. It was Lee Ji-yoon, the heiress to the Hansung Group. She was stunning in a pale blue gown, her face a mask of polite expectation. Everyone knew she was the intended match for Tae-on. She extended a hand, her smile tight. "Tae-on," she said, her voice carrying over the music. "Shall we?" The room held its breath. This was protocol. This was tradition. This was the way things were done in their world. Tae-on didn't even look at her hand. He kept his gaze locked on me, his dark eyes burning with an intensity that made my knees weak. "No," he said simply. The word was quiet, but it echoed like a gunshot in the silent ballroom. He turned to me, extending his hand again, palm up. "Vivian." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw Hannah drop her champagne glass. I saw the board members whispering furiously. I saw Ji-yoon's face crumble in humiliation before she turned and fled. "Sir," I whispered, panic clawing at my throat. "You can't. They're watching. The rumors." "Let them watch," he murmured, taking my hand before I could pull away. "Let them see." He pulled me onto the dance floor. His hand found the small of my back, his touch burning through the velvet of my dress. He pulled me close, closer than was appropriate for a boss and his intern. My chest brushed against his suit jacket. I could feel the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. We began to move. He led with effortless grace, guiding me through the steps of a waltz I barely remembered from high school. But with him, it was easy. I just had to follow. "Relax," he whispered against my hair. "You're stiff." "I'm terrified," I hissed back, clutching his shoulder. "Everyone is staring at us. They think I'm some kind of gold digger. Or worse. They think," he corrected, spinning me gently, "that I am the luckiest man in Seoul." I looked up at him, shocked. His face was close, so close I could count his eyelashes. There was no mockery in his eyes. Only heat. "Why?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. "Why me?" "You have, everyone. You have rules." He slowed the dance, pulling me even closer until we were barely swaying. The music faded into the background. "Because," he murmured, his thumb stroking the bare skin of my shoulder. "When I saw that photo, it wasn't just your body, Vivian. Though God knows that was enough to stop my heart." I blushed, looking down. "Look at me," he commanded softly. I looked up. "It was your eyes," he said. "In that photo, you looked bold. You looked dangerous. You looked like you wanted something." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. And I realized. "I wanted to give it to you." "Give me what?" I breathed. "Everything," he said. "The world. This company. Me." My heart hammered against my ribs. "But I'm just an intern." "Not anymore," he said firmly. "Tomorrow, you are promoted. You are my personal executive assistant. You answer only to me." Is that allowed?" "I am the CEO," he smirked, a glimpse of the arrogant man I knew returning. "I make the rules. And tonight, I am making a new one." He stopped dancing. We were in the center of the floor. The music swelled to a crescendo. He didn't let go. Instead, he raised his hand, signaling the DJ. The music cut out abruptly. The silence was deafening. Every eye in the room was fixed on us. Tae-on turned to face the crowd, keeping one arm possessively around my waist. He looked at the board members, the gossip columnists, the rivals. He looked at them with a cold, challenging stare. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice rang out, clear and authoritative. "I would like to introduce my date for the evening." He paused, looking down at me. The coldness vanished from his eyes, replaced by a warmth that melted my insides. "This is Vivian," he said. "And she is with me." It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't a declaration of love. But in the language of the elite, it was a claim. He was telling every single person in that room that I was under his protection. That insulting me meant insulting him. Flashbulbs erupted like a supernova. The room exploded into whispers. But I didn't care. For the first time all night, I didn't feel like an intern. I didn't feel like I made a mistake. I felt seen. Tae-on looked down at me, ignoring the chaos he had just unleashed. Ready to get out of here? Where? I asked dizzily. Somewhere quiet, he promised. I want to hear you say it again. Say what? He leaned down, his lips grazing my ear. Do you think CEO Kim can handle this? He pulled back, his eyes dark with promise. I intend to find out. He took my hand and led me off the dance floor, cutting through the crowd like a king leaving his court. We walked past Hannah, who looked like she had swallowed a lemon. We walked past the stunned board members. We walked out the double doors and into the cool night air. The valet brought his car around, not the sedan with the driver this time. A low, sleek sports car. He opened the passenger door for me, helping me in with a gentleness that belied his ruthless reputation. As he got into the driver's seat and roared the engine to life, I looked at him. Where are we going? He glanced over at me, his hand resting on the gear stick. My place. The air in the car crackled with tension. My place. The penthouse. The fortress of solitude that no woman had ever entered. Are you sure? I whispered. Vivian, he said, reaching over to take my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. We drove into the Seoul night, the city lights blurring past us. I watched his profile, the sharp jaw, the focused gaze. I realized then that my life as the invisible intern was over. I had sent a photo by mistake, and in return, I had captured a king. But as we pulled up to the private entrance of his building, a thought niggled at the back of my mind. What happens when the sun comes up? What happens when the reality of our different worlds crashes down? He parked the car and turned to me. The engine cut, leaving us in silence. You're thinking too much, he murmured, unbuckling his seatbelt and leaning toward me. I'm scared, I admitted. This is fast. This is crazy. Crazy is good, he said, his hand cupping my cheek. His thumb traced my lower lip. Crazy is better than boring. Crazy is better than invisible. He leaned in closer. I closed my eyes, my breath catching. Vivian, he whispered against my lips. Open your eyes. I did. I'm going to kiss you now, he said, his voice rough. And once I do, there is no going back. You understand. I looked at him. I saw the hunger in his eyes, but also the hesitation. He was giving me a choice. He was giving me the power. I thought about the photo. I thought about the red dress. I thought about how he had looked at me on the dance floor. I understand, I whispered. He didn't wait. He closed the distance, his lips crashing onto mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a claim. It was fire and velvet and desperation. It tasted like expensive wine and danger. I melted into him, my hands finding their way into his hair. The world outside the car ceased to exist. There was only him. Only us. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to be anywhere else. The elevator ride up to the penthouse was silent, but it was a loud kind of silence. The air in the small, mirrored box felt thick, charged with the electricity of what we had just done in the car. My lips still tingled from the pressure of his, a phantom sensation that made my knees feel like water. I stared at our reflections in the polished steel doors. There was Kim Tae-on, the ruthless king of Seoul, his tuxedo jacket discarded in the car, his tie loosened, looking like a disheveled god. And there was me, Vivian, the intern, standing in a dress that cost more than my rent, holding the hand of a man who owned the building we were ascending. You're thinking too much, Tae-on murmured. He didn't look at me, but his thumb brushed over the knuckles of my hand, a grounding, possessive touch. I'm thinking about the altitude, I whispered back, trying to joke through my nerves. My ears popped 3 floors ago. Just how high up do you live? High enough to forget the noise, he said. The doors slid open with a soft ding. If I thought the lobby was intimidating, his apartment was a fortress. It was vast. That was the first thing that hit me, the sheer, unnecessary scale of it. The ceilings were 2 stories high. The walls were glass, offering a panoramic view of Seoul that stole the breath from my lungs. The city lights glittered below like a carpet of diamonds, but up here, it was dead silent. "Welcome home," he said, stepping out and pulling me gently with him. I stepped onto floors made of dark, polished marble that reflected the night sky. The furniture was sleek, Italian, and looked like it had never been sat on. There were no personal photos. No clutter. No stray jackets or coffee mugs. It was a showroom. A beautiful, cold, empty box. "Do you?" I hesitated, my voice echoing slightly in the massive space. "Do you live here alone?" "I do," he said. He let go of my hand to lock the door behind us. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home felt final. We were locked in. The world was locked out. He walked over to a wet bar built into the wall and poured 2 glasses of water. He downed him in one gulp, as if he needed to steady himself, then brought the other to me. "You have no pictures," I noted, taking the glass. My hand brushed his, and a spark shot up my arm. "I have memories," he said, his voice low. "I don't need reminders of the past on my walls." He watched me take a sip, his eyes dark and unreadable. Then, he reached out and took the glass from my hand, setting it down on a side table without breaking eye contact. "Vivian," he said. "Yes." "Stop looking at the apartment." "It's beautiful," I defended. "It's cold," he corrected. He took a step closer, invading my space, forcing me to tilt my head back to look at him. "It has always been cold. Until about 30 seconds ago." My breath hitched. "Tae-on." "I meant what I said in the car," he whispered, bringing his hands up to cup my face. His palms were warm, rough against the smoothness of my skin. "There is no going back. Not for me. Tomorrow, the press will run the photos. The board will be screaming. My family will be calling for my resignation." "I know," I said, fear spiking in my chest. I can release a statement. I can say I forced you. I can quit." His eyes flashed with sudden, fierce anger. "Don't you dare." He slid his hands down my neck, his thumbs resting on my pulse point. He could feel my heart hammering. "You are not a scandal to be managed, Vivian," he said fiercely. "You are the first real thing that has happened to me in 10 years. Do you understand? I don't care about the board. I don't care about the stock price. I care about the fact that for the first time in my life, I want to come home." He leaned his forehead against mine, closing his eyes. "I want to come home to you." The vulnerability in his voice broke me. This man, who could buy countries, was lonely. He was standing in a glass castle, begging me not to leave. "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered. He let out a shuddering breath and kissed me. It wasn't like the kiss in the car. That was desperate, hungry. This was worship. He kissed me like I was made of glass, and he was terrified he might break me. He pulled back just an inch. "The dress," he murmured, his voice dropping an octave. "It's incredible. But I have been wanting to see what is underneath it since you sent me that photo." I blushed, heat flooding my cheeks. "You saw the photo." "A photo is pixels," he growled, his hands moving to the zipper at the back of the velvet gown. "I want the reality." The zipper hissed down. The heavy fabric pulled at my feet. I stood before him in the moonlight, feeling exposed and powerful all at once. He didn't touch me immediately. He just looked. He looked at me with such intense, reverent hunger that I felt like the most beautiful woman on earth. "Beautiful," he breathed. He swept me up into his arms, carrying me toward the bedroom. The city lights watched us, but for the first time, the penthouse didn't feel cold. It felt like it was finally burning. Light. Too much light. I groaned, burying my face in a pillow that smelled of sandalwood and expensive detergent. Memory flooded back in a rush: the gala, the dance, the car, the zipper. My eyes snapped open. I shot up in bed, clutching the charcoal sheet to my chest. The room was massive. Sunlight streamed in through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a king-sized bed that looked like a disaster zone of tangled limbs and sheets. And it was empty. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced my chest. He's gone. Of course he's gone. It's morning. The magic wore off. He woke up, saw the intern in his bed, realized he had destroyed his reputation for a night of fun, and left to do damage control. Stupid, I whispered to myself, tears pricking my eyes. Stupid, stupid Vivian. I scrambled out of bed, looking for my dress. It was folded neatly on a chair, but I couldn't put it back on. It was a gala gown. I couldn't do the walk of shame in velvet. I spotted a white dress shirt hanging on the door handle. It looked crisp clean. I grabbed it and pulled it on. It swallowed me whole, the hem hitting my mid-thigh, the sleeves hanging past my hands. It smelled like him. It made my heart ache. I crept out of the bedroom, walking down the long hallway toward the living area. I expected silence. I expected a note on the counter saying, "There's a cab waiting downstairs. Sign this NDA." Instead, I smelled bacon and coffee. Rich, dark, freshly ground coffee. I rounded the corner into the kitchen and froze. Tae-on was there. He was standing at the stove, wearing gray sweatpants that hung low on his hips and absolutely nothing else. His back was to me, revealing the muscles that shifted as he flipped something in a pan. He looked domestic. He looked normal. "You're awake," he said, not turning around. I jumped. "How did you know?" Reflection in the window. He pointed with the spatula to the glass in front of him. He turned around then, leaning against the counter. His eyes swept over me, taking in the messy hair, the bare legs, and his shirt hanging off my shoulders. A slow, satisfied smirk spread across his face. "I knew that shirt would look better on you," he murmured. "I thought you left," I blurted out. My voice sounded small, shaky. His smile faded instantly. He set the spatula down and walked over to me, closing the distance in 3 long strides. "Left," he repeated, looking offended. "Where would I go?" To fix things," I stammered. "The board. The scandal. I thought you woke up and regretted it." "Vivian." He sighed, reaching out to tuck a stray curl behind my ear. His touch was gentle, reassuring. "I have been awake for 2 hours. I answered 40 emails. I told the board to schedule a meeting for Monday because I am unavailable today. And then," he gestured to the kitchen island. "Then I made pancakes." I looked past him. The island was covered in food. Not just pancakes. There were eggs, bacon, fruit, toast, and sitting innocently in the middle, a jar of Nutella. You cooked?" I asked, bewildered. "You're a billionaire. Don't you have a chef?" "I gave the staff the day off," he said. "I didn't want anyone else here this morning. Just us." He walked back to the island and pulled out a bar stool. "Sit. Eat. You need energy." I sat down, still reeling. "Energy for what?" He poured me a cup of coffee, sliding it across the marble counter. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the island, his face inches from mine. "Because," he said, his eyes darkening with mischief, "after breakfast, we are going to have a very serious conversation about your employment." I froze, the coffee cup halfway to my mouth. "My employment?" "Yes," he said, his face dead serious. "I can't have you working as an intern anymore." My heart dropped. "So, you are firing me?" "Firing you." He laughed, a low, rumbly sound that vibrated in my chest. "No, Vivian. I'm promoting you. I can't have my future wife fetching coffee for the marketing department. It would be inappropriate." I choked on my coffee. Cough. Cough. "Future, what?" I wheezed, wiping my mouth. He didn't correct himself. He didn't take it back. He just watched me with that intense, predatory gaze, a small smile playing on his lips. "Eat your pancakes, Vivian," he said softly. "We have a long day ahead of us." He didn't stay on the other side of the island. He walked around to where I was sitting, stepping between my knees to pull me close. And when he kissed me slow and sweet in the morning light, I knew he wasn't joking. I really was the future Mrs. Kim. My phone, which had been blissfully silent on the kitchen island, suddenly began to vibrate so hard it nearly walked off the marble edge. I picked it up. 150 missed calls. 3,000 new notifications. And right at the top, a FaceTime request from Cynthia. I accepted it, propping the phone up against a bowl of fruit. Cynthia's face filled the screen, her eyes so wide they looked like saucers. She wasn't at her desk. She was hiding in a supply closet, whispering, screaming. Vivian, do not hang up. Do not move. Are you alive? I'm alive, I laughed, taking a bite of a strawberry. Why are you whispering? Why am I whispering? Girl, turn on the news. Open Twitter. Open anything. You're trending. #1. Worldwide. They're calling you the Cinderella of Seoul. There are pictures of you on the dance floor. There are pictures of him holding your hand. There is a zoomed-in blurry photo of his hand on your lower back. She fanned herself dramatically. The internet is broken. The server at work crashed twice. Hannah is in the bathroom crying. It is glorious chaos. I glanced over at Tae-on. He was leaning against the counter, sipping his coffee, watching me with that unbothered, possessive smirk. He could hear every word. Is Hannah really crying? I asked, a petty thrill shooting through me. Sobbing. She's telling everyone you bewitched him. But nobody cares because Dispatch just released an article titled, "The King and His Queen, Who is the Mystery Woman?" Cynthia paused, leaning closer to the camera. Vivi, tell me the truth. Did you know? I felt my face heat up. Tae-on chuckled, low and deep. I have to go, Cynthia, I said quickly. I'll see you at the office. The office? You're coming in? Today? Dressed like what? Please tell me you're not wearing the gray sack. I looked down at Tae-on's oversized white shirt. She will not be wearing the gray sack, Tae-on's deep voice cut in, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Cynthia squealed so loud the audio cracked. Oh my God, is that him? Is he there? Hi, Mr. Kim. I love your work. Vivian, don't come to your work. Just stay there and make babies. I hung up instantly, my face burning. Tae-on was laughing now, a genuine, open sound I had never heard in the office. She seems energetic, he noted. She's loyal, I defended, hopping off the stool. But she's right. I can't go to work like this. And I can't go home to change because there are probably paparazzi camped out on my fire escape. Problem solved, Tae-on said, pulling a garment bag from the hallway closet. I had my stylist send over a few options while you were sleeping. Of course he did. Walking into Kim Enterprises that morning wasn't a walk, it was a coronation. I was wearing a tailored cream power suit that cost more than my car, my hair loose and wild, my chin held high. And Tae-on. Tae-on was holding my hand. He didn't drop it when we entered the lobby. He didn't drop it in the elevator. The silence was deafening. The security guard stared. The receptionist stopped typing. As we walked past the bullpen, heads turned so fast I thought I heard necks snapping. Keep walking, Tae-on murmured, squeezing my hand. Eyes on me. We reached the executive floor. Hannah was standing by the copier, her eyes red-rimmed. When she saw us, fingers interlaced, united front, she turned a shade of pale, usually reserved for ghosts. Mr. Kim, she stammered. I have the reports. Give them to my assistant, Tae-on said dismissively, not even breaking stride. To Sarah? Hannah asked. No, Tae-on stopped. He turned to face the entire room. To Vivian. The silence stretched. Vivian is now the director of special operations, Tae-on announced, his voice carrying to every cubicle. She answers only to me. Anything you have for me goes through her first. Is that clear? Yes, sir, the room chorused. Hannah looked like she had swallowed a whole lemon. I gave her a small, polite smile, the kind that hurts more than a frown. I'll take those reports now, Hannah, I said softly. She handed them over, her hand shaking. Tae-on pulled me into his office and kicked the door shut. He hit a button on the wall, and the blinds descended, blocking out the staring eyes. The moment we were private, the professional facade dropped. He pinned me against the heavy oak door, his hands finding my waist. Director of Special Operations? I teased, breathless. That sounds made up. It is, he growled, kissing my neck. Your only operation is managing me. And I am a very demanding project. I can tell, I sighed, melting into him. People are going to talk, Tae-on. They're going to say I slept my way to the top. He pulled back, gripping my chin to force me to look at him. Let them talk. In a year, they'll be working for you. In 5 years, they'll be begging for an invite to our wedding. 6 months later. Pack a bag. I looked up from my laptop. I was in my new office, which was actually just a desk I had moved into Tae-on's office because he refused to let me work in another room. Excuse me. Pack a bag, Tae-on repeated, closing his laptop. We're leaving. Leaving? We have the quarterly review tomorrow. And the board meeting on Thursday. Cancelled, he said. Postponed. I don't care. Tae-on, you can't just. I can. I'm the CEO. He walked over and spun my chair around. And you need a vacation. You've been working nonstop. You have dark circles. I do not. I protested. You do. And they are beautiful, but I prefer you to rest. The jet is fueled. We leave in an hour. The jet? I blinked. Where are we going? Santorini. 12 hours later, I was standing on a private terrace overlooking the Aegean Sea. The water was blue so deep it looked like ink. The white buildings of OA climbed the cliffside like sugar cubes. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and purple. It was breathtaking. Tae-on came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder. Better than the office, he murmured. Much, I admitted, leaning back into him. But why are we really here, Tae-on? You don't take vacations. You barely take lunch breaks. He went silent. I felt his heart beating against my back, a fast, erratic rhythm that didn't match his calm voice. He turned me around. The wind caught my hair, blowing the curls across my face. He brushed them away, his hand lingering on my cheek. Vivian, he started. He looked nervous. The man who negotiated billion-dollar mergers without blinking looked terrified. I brought you here because the office is too loud, he said. Seoul is too loud. I needed somewhere quiet to ask you something. He took a step back. My breath hitched. No way. He reached into his pocket. Yes way. He dropped to one knee on the white stone terrace. The sunset framed him like a halo. He opened a small, velvet box. Inside sat a diamond that made the Santorini sunset look dull. It was an oval cut, flawless, set on a thin gold band. Simple. Elegant. Massive. 6 months ago, he said, his voice thick with emotion, you sent me a photo by mistake. You thought you were invisible. You thought I was out of your league. He looked up at me, his eyes shining. But the truth is, Vivian, I was the one who was lost. I was living in black and white until you walked in wearing red. You challenge me. You make me laugh. You make me want to be a man worthy of you. He took a shaky breath. I don't want to be your boss anymore. I don't want to be just your boyfriend. I want to be your family. I want to wake up with you every morning and argue about what to order for dinner. I want to build a legacy with you. Vivian, he whispered. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down my face, hot and fast. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, falling to my knees in front of him. Yes, I choked out. Yes, Tae-on. 1,000 times yes. He let out a laugh, a sound of pure relief, and pulled me into a crushing kiss. He slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. I love you, he whispered against my lips. My accident. My fate. I love you, I cried. As we kissed under the dying light of the Greek sun, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Once. Twice. 100 times. I pulled back, laughing through my tears. Let me guess. Cynthia knows. He smirked. I might have texted her before I knelt down. She demanded a live update. I pulled out my phone. A text from Cynthia. Did he do it? Is it huge? Are you Mrs. CEO yet? Send pics or I quit. I snapped a photo of my hand, the ring glittering against the backdrop of the ocean, and hit send. Caption: I think he handled it. They called it the wedding of the century. The press had been camping outside the Shilla Hotel for 3 days, their drones buzzing like angry hornets against the windows of the bridal suite. Every tabloid in Seoul was running the same headline: the King of Seoul marries the Cinderella intern. But inside the suite, it didn't feel like a headline. It felt like a hurricane. If one more person asks me about the flower arrangements, I am going to scream, Cynthia announced, marching into the room with a bottle of champagne in one hand and a terrifyingly large hairbrush in the other. She was wearing a maid of honor dress in soft blush pink, and she looked ready to fight an army. Vivian, sit down. You are pacing a hole in the carpet. I can't sit, I whispered, my hands trembling. My dress will wrinkle. The fabric costs more than my entire college education, Cynthia scoffed. It won't wrinkle. Sit. I sat. I looked at myself in the gilded mirror, and for a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. I wasn't the girl who made photocopies. I wasn't the girl who hid in oversized hoodies. I was a queen. I hadn't chosen white. White felt too innocent for the story of how we began. White was for fairy tales where the princess waits in a tower. I hadn't waited. I had sent a photo that burned down the tower. So, I chose royal gold. The dress was a masterpiece of heavy silk and intricate beading, shimmering like liquid sunlight. It was strapless, hugging every inch of my curves before flaring out into a dramatic train that filled the room. Against my skin, the gold looked electric. It was sharp, bold, and impossible to ignore. It was a statement. You look. Cynthia stopped, her voice catching. She blinked rapidly, waving the hairbrush threateningly. Don't you dare make me cry. My mascara is waterproof, but I am not testing it today. You look beautiful, too, I smiled, reaching for her hand. Thank you. For everything. For telling me to send that text. Technically, she grinned, you didn't send it to me. But I'll take the credit. A knock on the door interrupted us. It was Tae-on's mother, the matriarch of the Kim family. A woman who, 3 years ago, had reportedly fainted when she heard her son was dating a foreigner. She walked in, wearing a traditional hanbok in pale blue. She stopped when she saw me. Her eyes swept over the gold dress, the diamond tiara, the way I held my head high. Vivian, she said softly. Mother, I replied, bowing my head slightly in respect. She walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. My son has never been happy, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. He has been successful. He has been powerful. But he has never been happy. Until you. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, velvet pouch. This was my grandmother's. It is tradition for the bride to wear jade. She fastened a delicate jade bracelet around my wrist. The green stone looked stark and beautiful against the gold silk. Thank you, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. Don't cry, she commanded gently. Queens do not cry in public. Make him wait no longer. The ceremony was held in the hotel's private garden, a lush oasis hidden from the city. As the doors opened and the music swelled, not a traditional wedding march, but a string quartet version of the jazz song that was playing the night we met at the gala, the air left the room. I walked down the aisle alone. I wanted to walk to him on my own 2 feet, proving that I came to him as an equal. The guests blurred into a sea of faces. I saw Hannah, looking humbled and a little awestruck in the back row. I saw the board of directors, who now stood when I entered a room. But at the end of the aisle, standing beneath an arch of white roses, was Kim Tae-on. He was wearing a black tuxedo with a velvet lapel, sharp and devastatingly handsome. His hands were clasped in front of him, his face a mask of composure. Then he saw me. His composure shattered. His eyes went wide, his lips parting slightly. He took a half step forward, as if he couldn't wait for me to reach him. The look on his face wasn't just love. It was hunger. It was pride. It was the look of a man seeing his entire world walking toward him in royal gold. When I reached him, he didn't wait for the priest. He reached out and took my hands, his grip tight, grounding me. "Gold," he whispered, his voice rough. "You look dangerous." "I thought you liked danger," I whispered back. "I love it," he vowed. The ceremony was a blur of vows and rings, but I remembered every word he said. "Vivian," he said, his voice ringing out clearly in the silent garden. "I spent my life building walls. I thought I was protecting my legacy. I didn't know I was just building a cage. You didn't just open the door, you burned the whole thing down. I promised to protect you, to honor you, and to never, ever let you be invisible again." When the priest finally said, "You may kiss the bride," Tae-on didn't hesitate. He dipped me low, kissing me with a passion that made the guests cheer and the old aunties gasp. Finally, he breathed against my lips. Mrs. Kim. 5 years later. The sun was setting over the private garden of our home in the hills of Seoul. The air smelled of jasmine and grilled meat. No, don't eat the dirt. I sprinted across the grass, my bare feet sinking into the plush lawn, and scooped up my 2-year-old son, Gino. He giggled, his hands covered in mud, and tried to wipe them on my white sundress. "You're exactly like your father," I laughed, wiping his face. "Destructive and charming." "And hungry," a deep voice added. I turned to see Tae-on walking onto the patio. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, carrying a tray of sliced watermelon. Even after 5 years, the sight of him relaxed, happy mine, still made my heart do a little flip. "Daddy." Our 4-year-old daughter, Ari, came tearing out of the bushes. She was a force of nature, with my wild curls and Tae-on's fierce, determined eyes. She was wearing a miniature version of a red dress, because apparently, the color was genetic. Tae-on set the tray down and caught her midair, swinging her up onto his shoulders. "There's my princess. Did you find any tigers in the garden?" "No tigers," she reported seriously. "Just a frog." "A frog." Tae-on looked mock terrified. "We must alert security immediately." He walked over to me, wrapping his free arm around my waist and pulling me into his side. Gino reached out for his sister, and suddenly, we were a tangled knot of limbs and laughter. "They're exhausting," I sighed, resting my head on Tae-on's shoulder. "They're perfect," he corrected, kissing the top of my head. We watched them run off again to terrorize the poor frog, their laughter echoing in the twilight. Tae-on turned me to face him, his expression turning serious. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "What?" I asked, confused. "I was going through my archives today," he said, a mischievous glint in his eye. "And I found something." He turned the screen toward me. It was the photo. The one from 5 years ago. Me in the red dress, looking terrified and bold in the mirror. The caption read, "Do you think CEO Kim could handle this?" I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "Delete it. Tae-on, please, it's so embarrassing." "Never," he laughed, pulling my hands away. "It's my favorite photo. It's the moment my life actually started." He slid the phone back into his pocket and pulled me closer, his hands resting on my hips, his thumbs tracing circles on my skin. The playful mood shifted into something heavier, hotter. "So," he murmured, leaning down until his lips were inches from mine. "It's been 5 years, Mrs. Kim. A wedding. 2 children. A global empire." He brushed his lips against mine, a feather-light touch that sent shivers down my spine. Before I tell you what he whispered next, make sure you hit that subscribe button on Stories Pulse and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss the next romance story we have cooking for you. Trust me, it's going to be wild. Tae-on pulled back just enough to look me in the eye, his gaze dark with that same intense, possessive hunger he had looked at me with on the dance floor all those years ago. "You asked if I could handle you," he whispered, his voice a low growl that promised a very long, Very happy night. What do you think? Have I proven myself yet? I smiled, wrapping my arms around his neck and pulling him down to me. I don't know, Mr. Kim, I teased. I think you might need another 50 years to convince me. He laughed against my lips. Challenge accepted.